All right, thank you so much. Take it away.
No problem. Okay, so I think my name's Sam. I'm with NOAA's Office of Law Enforcement. I'm responsible for Central Coast of California, as well as the 4 National Marine Sanctuaries, and hopefully soon to be 5 in the state. So what I did today is kind of put together a case study on some recent violation I had that I saw through the criminal process all the way to the end. I think the group here is more apt to knowing what wildlife violations are or aren't and how to be a good witness, which is normally the kinds of talks I do for volunteer groups, which if you guys ever need that and have some volunteers, I'm more than happy to put on some of those presentations. Anyway, so I'll give kind of a short case study of some recent violation I have. It's kind of a different one, and it actually was the first time this regulation was seen through ever in the National Marine Sanctuary history and since its inception. So I guess I want to highlight there's a big difference between regulations being in effect and these getting written into law and actually being seen through a process. And some of the laws really have a difficulty in actually proving and writing fines. Okay. At the bottom is kind of all our state partners along the coast. Okay, our mission. I think it's kind of the same mission that most people have in wildlife, as we're trying to preserve these things so our kids and our kids' kids and our grandkids can all go out and enjoy the nature that's around us. Okay, so Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. Although I'm responsible for all the National Marine Sanctuaries enforcement actions, mostly what I spend my time in with Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary and kind of areas. And really, I think my personal feelings are the reason for that is the population dense areas that are around this sanctuary. Greater Farallones is kind of, far out north and doesn't have the population. Channel Islands is offshore and kind of, you need to have boats, and most people don't have boats to get out there. But Monterey Bay is right smack next to a lot of population centers. So we're seeing a lot more regular activity than some other areas. So added challenges with enforcement due to resource limitations. I'm the only person in the Central Coast of California responsible for 4 National Marine Sanctuaries, which is over 11 million square acres of ocean, as well as 272 miles of coastline, I believe. That's for NOAA. We have state partners, we have federal partners, we have Coast Guard, we have U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, CDFW. But for me, enforcing National Marine Sanctuary regulations, as well as the marine mammals that I'm charged with protecting, which is most of the ones here except for sea otters, thank God. So some of the things that we enforce too that we don't really think about as enforcing and having an impact on wildlife is boats, jet skis, and even planes. So planes is kind of where I'm going to land on today, just because I had some recent cases that I saw through the whole process, and some of the other ones are in the process and I can't share with you, or are a little more like sensitive in nature. So this one, I try to black out anything that had identifiable information. If you see something, I'm sorry, don't call the guy and say I shared his information. Okay. Overflight violations in Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. So pretty much every National Marine Sanctuary along the coast of California has a similar regulation to this of having some zones along the coast that you can't fly below a certain level. And it was kind of determined, and you can read that flying anything below that level is presumed to harass wildlife, bird life in these critical habitat areas. This is a map of those areas. The red is kind of where those zones are. So Elkhorn Slough is pretty close to home here, and Moss Landing area, as well as the whole Big Sur coast for the most part. So these cases are particularly hard to prove because online information is unreliable. Tracking down what plane's up in the sky when you see a white blurb up in the air. We've got a lot of reports, and it ends up being medevacs and things like that kind of have a reason to be flying low. But the regulation's in place for a reason. It's presumed to, and then obviously there's some critical habitat areas where it's more important than other areas where we really are concerned about. Let's see. Overflight violation. So that's not the guy's plane. That's a picture of a plane just like it. So this one, so if there's any numbers on it, it's not his. Wilder Ranch State Park. It's up north near Santa Cruz. And the plane was a 2005 Cessna 550 twin turbojet engine. So a lot of the violations we get with this kind of stuff are small prop planes, single engine, kind of recreational pilots flying and enjoying coastlines and flying low, getting good views. This was particularly interesting because, as we all know, jet engines are a lot louder than props. And really the spirit of the regulation was because of the noise. So when we got the initial report of this, we kind of jumped on it pretty quickly because of the egregiousness, as you'll see. So initial report. If you see anybody's info there, I'm sorry, I tried to block it all out. So we got an email. So there's a number of different ways violations come into to me. We have a hotline that I'll give you the number for, but also the National Marine Sanctuaries all have reporting lines, and some way it gets to me eventually. So this is, I'm not going to read it, but kind of a typical email I get of something happened. I'd say 80% of them are non-actionable. They don't have details. They don't have the evidence that's going to be needed. And I kind of, being the only one, the Central Coast, kind of have to triage of the immediate fashion to see if this one's going to be worthwhile. Because if I chase one down that's not, it's maybe one that's I could be seeing through the prosecution process that I have to let go. So immediately I get an email like this, and I think that, you know, there's potential here. So I start putting together some evidence and seeing what I can come up with and to make a case. So when you got the information, it had some tail numbers and stuff. So the FAA runs a registry of all planes that are registered in the sky. It's public knowledge. If anybody sees a plane, you can get a hold of the tail numbers through some flight tracking apps and then plug it in here. You're going to get a hold of the pilots, the owner of the plane's information. A lot of times they have businesses to protect liability, but you can find out who owns the business. So this is the plane's info with his pertinent info blacked out. Okay, this is the flight track he made. So this is through one of these flight tracking apps that are available to public. I don't know if you've seen, there was a guy that was kind of harassing Elon Musk for a while and using one of these to see where he was. So this is public information. You can go on there and say, hey, I saw this plane. Wow, that looked really bad. Like he was really low. I want to see how low. You can go on these. There's some estimates of heights and altitudes. Not all of them are completely accurate, but if you're 100 feet off the ground, you're definitely not above 1,000. But there can be 100 or 200 feet of difference sometimes with these apps. So this is kind of the intended path. And if you remember that map, clearly that top section is kind of where he went into. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, I think we have a violation. He's over the shores, but now I have to prove it. Here we go. So flight tracking data of heights. I circled over there. There were some of the lowest logged altitudes of barometric altitude, which is, again, not completely accurate, but if you're going 25 feet above sea level, you're probably not over 1,000. So as well as that graph of kind of where on the course of his trip where he was and how you can see he got really low. Here's a video of, so really unique situation, and this kind of, it's like, oh, I can get after this one. A lot of times we have some good Samaritans that are just sitting on flight trackers and reporting things. I kind of, you know, would like to have a witness if I'm going to put something before potentially a judge and stuff, because, you know, these online applications are not completely accurate. So this was a unique situation. I don't know if there's going to have sound. If it does, I'm sorry. I think there was some funny stuff being said by the person. Hopefully it plays. Good enough sound. So the report was that he traveled along the coastline and it abruptly peels up and goes straight up to, if you look at the flight tracker data, within a minute, he's up back to 1,000 feet. A good zoom in photo of kind of him at the cliffs level. Well, if you've ever been out there, the cliffs are maybe 25 to 50 feet. So if he's at eye level, he's really low to the side. So I think between seeing flight tracker data, identifying the plane, who the owner is, and looking at that picture, it's kind of starting to become what the law says is beyond the reasonable doubt that he was probably below 1,000 feet. Witness statements. So witness statements are always good. They're not always completely necessary, but when somebody reports it, sometimes they don't want to get in trouble or don't want to have somebody harassing them for kind of being like I don't know, we don't like to use the word, but like a snitch. But this guy was more than happy to, as long as we kept his name out of it, to provide a statement of what he saw hiking on the cliff that day and saw was egregious and cared about the environment. Because there's one of me, I'm not going to be out there every day, all day, sitting there waiting for planes to come by. So it's really great when people report. So you can see he gave Google Maps of where he was. He attached a Flight Aware, which is a great app if you're ever out there, that shows you that public shared information and kind of where he was, when, and kind of how things happened. Interview. So normally at some point I'm going to contact the guy that potentially had the violation. So it ended up being that the owner of the plane wasn't the one flying, and most people that own planes can also, especially a jet like that, can afford to pay for someone to fly him around. And this specific instance, the pilot had borrowed his boss's plane to go on a scenic flight. So some of the things he stated why he was being in the interview. So I asked him if he was a pilot. Yes. Subject stated, I was taking my nephew on a scenic flight. So presumably a child flying at 25 feet along the cliff's edge in a twin turbo jet engine. It's probably not the smartest thing, although we don't have regulations on what's smart and not. So subject said he was unaware of the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary flight restriction, was not aware exactly how low he was flying. Every app and maps that they have, all the sanctuary's flight restrictions are in there. Lucky for us that he doesn't have to know to be in violation of the law, and that goes for most laws, which is pretty good. So at the end of it, you can see from start to finish that it's kind of painting a picture that, like, beyond a reasonable doubt, this guy was flying below 1,000 feet. He was on the coastline. He presumably harassed wildlife, because how could a bird not fly away from a twin jet engine right next to its home? And lucky for us, he wasn't quite as far north as where the elephant seals are breeding, or we would have been having a different conversation with the Endangered Species Act and not just a Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary violation. So outcomes. So after I do all that, we get to outcomes. So the NOAA has a couple different processes of how we can see about fines and take things through the prosecutory process. So significantly reasonable based upon known fact that there was a violation of Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary regulations. I think everybody would agree that this guy was in violation. So what I did is I offered him a summary settlement offer, which is NOAA's version of, hey, you committed this violation. We all know. I can turn this over to NOAA's prosecutory attorneys. You're going to go through a whole legal process, potentially have to go to court, and the fine's going to be really big. NOAA kind of has a process that says, let's save government resources. You can pay a fine and I can work on 5 other cases at the same time and rather just yours. And I offer him kind of a lower amount. So I offered the guy $350, pay the fine, admit to wrongdoing, you're guilty, and walk away. It goes into our system and really doesn't go anywhere else on like a driver's record or with the state and anything. So it's really a good deal for these people, and it saves a lot of government resources, and it frees me up to work on the next one and the next one. Anytime I'm handling a caseload of 20 to 30 cases, everything from Marine Mammal Protection Act cases, Endangered Species Act cases, Sanctuary Act cases, sometimes things that get into wildlife trafficking across borders and internationally too. So it's kind of great when somebody is willing to pay the summary settlement, because I can move on to the next one and keep the process going, because there's not a lot of us. So pilot agreed to pay $350, didn't contest the violation. So presumably for someone that owns a plane or doesn't own a plane, it's not a very high fine, but I think it at least admits wrongdoing. And then what happens next time is he doesn't get the choice of whether to get a summary settlement or not. If this pilot's ever in violation of the sanctuary regulations again, it automatically goes to our prosecutory attorneys, which they get issued a NOVA, which is notification of violation and assessment, which on average, we like to tell them it's 4 to 5 times what this summary settlement offer would be. So I think is a little bit better and hits closer to home. I think that's the end of it. And that's NOAA's hotline. That's the best way to contact me. There's one of me. I don't work all hours of the day. If I give you my cell phone number, I'd get really annoyed pretty quickly. So call our hotline. There's one of us on duty 24 hours a day. And if that officer determines it's a viable case, they will call me if it's in my area and forward me along the information. So we have an answering service that NOAA contracts. They pass the information, and then an officer will call you back.